Hey everybody, this is GGB. Today we're going to talk about college basketball upset of the day, Wednesday edition. I'm sorry I didn't get Monday or Tuesday out. Monday just kind of got away from me. I was hanging out with my friends and it just kind of happened. I ended up getting sick. That's why I ended up not getting the Tuesday one out actually, because I slept in the next day and then I had to go to school and I just never got home until it was really too late. But today we actually do have some pretty solid college basketball upset of the day. We have 5 games, and I think 4 of them have a definite shot of hitting. At number 6 o'clock, we got number 13 LSU, which is at 15-2, traveling to Alabama, which is at 11-6. Alabama somehow favored by 4 points on ESPN2. At 7 o'clock, we got Marquette, which is at 12-6, traveling to number 11 Villanova. Villanova sits at 13-4, favored by 14 points. On CBS Sports Network, 7:30, we got number 12 Kentucky, 14-3, traveling to Texas A&M, which is at 15-2. Kentucky favored by 7 points on the SEC Network. 8 o'clock, we got Georgia, which sits at 5-12. At number 2, Auburn, which sits at 16-1. Auburn favored by 21.5 points on ESPNU. And at 8 o'clock, we got number 20, Xavier, which sits at 13-3, traveling to DePaul, which sits at 10-6. Xavier favored by 8 points on FS1. So let's go over this real quick. The SEC ones. We have 3 SEC games actually. So we have 3 SEC games tonight. We have 2 Big East games tonight. So we only have to really about 2 conferences. We have LSU, which is playing Alabama, right? LSU with a win would move to 4-2, right? And ideally, I guess if you're LSU, Kentucky would also lose tonight, which would drop them also to 4-2. Mississippi State is playing Florida right now and up by 8 points. So ideally also for LSU, Mississippi State would also lose that game because a Mississippi State win would move them to 4-1. So realistically for LSU, there is a possibility of moving up to 3rd place, which would be huge. Obviously, you want to be high in the SEC, but if things don't go your way and you still win, you move to 4-2, right? Unfortunately, you would stay in 5th place because if Mississippi State wins today against Florida, they move to 4-1, and if Kentucky wins, they move to 5-1. And even with a Texas A&M loss, they would be at 4-1. You're not catching them. So this is a really interesting part about this: is LSU could win today and not move at all, but they could also win today, move up to 3rd place. It just depends on what else happens today as well. Now, on the other side of things, if LSU loses, they fall into the tie. Arkansas, which sits at 3-3 in conference, they play Texas A&M on Saturday. We'll see how that turns out. And then you have Tennessee, which also sits at 3-3 in conference. Tennessee plays LSU on Saturday, does not play until then. They played yesterday. They play Vandy. So I'm sitting at half a point, so I got to get since I didn't predict yesterday's games, I got to get one of these right. So with an LSU loss, they would drop into the pile, right? Right now, they have sole proprietorship of 5th place. With a loss, you would suddenly be tied with Arkansas, Tennessee, and Alabama all for 5th place. So that's what would happen for LSU with a loss. And a win. Alabama with a win. Obviously, Alabama moves to 3-3 in conference, gets into the tie for 5th place, which is huge for considering an Alabama team that has started off a little bit rough on a 3-game losing skid. With a loss, they would fall. They would fall pretty dramatically. It depends on what happens tonight. South Carolina sits at 1-4, but they don't play again until Saturday. So worst case scenario for Alabama, actually, though, is if Alabama loses today, then theoretically, right, you would 100% drop. You would move to 2-4. Right now, they're in 2-3 and tied with Vanderbilt and Missouri for 8th place, right? With a loss, you would move out of the tie, right, and you would fall 11th place. But with a win, Florida would also pass you. So this could really go downhill for Alabama rather quickly. You won't fall below South Carolina, Ole Miss, or Georgia for now, but you would be in the bottom 4 of the SEC, which is not good. Not good place to be for Alabama. Alabama, again, desperately needs to win here. Let's go to the other SEC teams we got. We got Kentucky playing Texas A&M, and this is kind of a simple one. This one's not all that hard. With a win for Texas A&M and a loss by Auburn, Texas A&M moves into the first place. Texas A&M wins, but Auburn also wins, then Texas A&M stays in second place. With a Kentucky win and a Texas A&M loss, Texas A&M would fall to 4-1. And it would all depend on what would happen. So Kentucky would move to 5-1. Kentucky would take second place in the SEC, unless Auburn was also to lose today against Georgia. Then in that case scenario, Kentucky would be tied for first, right? So regardless of whether you're a Texas A&M fan or a Kentucky fan, you're going to be rooting for your team at 7:30, and then at 8 o'clock, you're also rooting for Georgia to pull off a massive upset against Auburn, right? That's the ideal scenario for one of you guys, because if that scenario happens, you could either take a piece of first place or take first place altogether. With a loss for Texas A&M, by the way, they would move to 4-1. They'd be tied for third place, or they'd have either third place by themselves or tied for third place, depending on what happens between Mississippi State and Florida tonight. That's what happened with a win. Kentucky lost. They'd move to 4-2. And what it really they could end up staying in third place if you're Kentucky and you lose this game, or you could end up falling to fifth place, tied for fourth place, depending on Mississippi State beats Florida tonight and LSU beats Alabama. If neither of those things happen, though, then Kentucky stays in third place. If both those things happen, you end up tied for fifth place with LSU. So interesting thing there that can happen for Kentucky. And then the other scenarios games, we got Auburn and they're playing Georgia. Obviously, Auburn is likely not to lose this game, but if Auburn does end up losing it, you move to 5-1. And if Texas A&M, depending on who wins, you either move to second or you're still tied for first place. So obviously, if you're Auburn, you're kind of rooting for Kentucky to win this one because it gives you a little bit more wiggle room. You'd be tied for first place instead of losing first place. So weirdly enough, if you're an Auburn fan, you're a little bit of a Kentucky fan today to beat Texas A&M. With a win, obviously, you stay in first place. With a loss for Georgia, they're in last place. But with a win for Georgia, you move out of last place, then you're tied for last place. You're tied with South Carolina and Ole Miss. Again, they're not going to play till Saturday. So this is what you need if you're Georgia. You need to try and dig yourself out of the hole that you've created for yourself. So, yeah, those are the games that are going on in the SEC. And then if you look at the Big East, we have two pretty significant games on. Today, you got the number 5 team, actually tied for third place. Just the fifth place team in Marquette, which is at 4-3 in conference, playing the number 1 team in Villanova. But Marquette is on a hot streak, so is Villanova. Again, these two teams hold the longest winning streaks in the Big East. Villanova has won 6 straight, while Marquette has won 4 straight. With a win for Villanova, obviously they stay in first place. With a loss, they move to 6-2. I did the calculation. 6-2 is not as good of a record as 4-1 for Providence. So Providence would take first place in the Big East with a Marquette win tonight. Marquette win would move them to 5-3. I'm not positive how that tiebreaker would work out with UConn and use math here real quick. Xavier have a 3-2 record, right? That would give them a 60% win rate. A Marquette win would move them 5 out of 8 games they've won. That would get a 62.5% rate. So Marquette theoretically could, with a win, move ahead of Xavier and UConn. But the thing that you got to take into consider is that Xavier also plays today. So with a win for Xavier, they would stay ahead of Marquette. UConn does not play tonight. They were scheduled to play. Wait, I don't think they do. UConn plays Butler tomorrow, so we'll see what happens there. But for the time being in the Big East, at least Marquette would pass UConn at the very least and take 4th place. With a loss, they move to 4-4. They don't move down any. They're still at 500, and they have more wins than St. John's and Creighton, but obviously not an ideal place to be. You're significantly behind Xavier and UConn, so need a win here tonight if you're Marquette. Obviously, this could end up not affecting you at all. Again, if you win, you could still be in 5th place by as early as tomorrow, especially considering how bad Butler has turned out to be this year. Then you got Xavier playing DePaul. If Xavier is to lose that game, remember, Marquette could move up even with a loss. If Marquette is to lose this game, they could fall to 4-4. But if Xavier loses to DePaul, then Xavier would fall to 3-3, which would be below Marquette. So Marquette would take fourth place even with a loss tonight. So interesting case scenario there. With a win, Xavier moves to 4-2. Not anything special. It's just that you would end the tie with UConn for now, at least until they play Butler tomorrow. Right now they're tied for third place. They would take they would own third place at least for the night. DePaul with a win would move to 2-5. Again, it's not going to pass anyone. At least until and you're not going to get 1-5 is. I mean, you're going to be 2-5 if you're DePaul. That's not quite as good as Seton Hall or Butler yet, but Butler plays tomorrow. We'll see if Butler loses, then that DePaul will be tied for second to last. So DePaul could use a win here if they want to start climbing back up these standings. So anyways, those are the games and how they'll affect the standings overall. Who do I think personally will win? I'm sitting at only 1.5 points because on Monday there was no upset because there was only there were two top 25 teams playing each other. We didn't get the upset. So I got half a point on that day. And there were some upsets yesterday, so I didn't get any points because I didn't pick any of them. So here I sit. I kind of need a dub here tonight. And to get back on track, if I can get the biggest upset of the day, I could get sitting at 2 points heading into Thursday, which would be so huge. Be a great, great chance. Plus, there's some really good games on Thursday. I'm really ready to get that to you guys. I'm really kind of excited about some of these games. There's definitely an argument for 2 of them. I'm gonna maybe even 3. Colorado's a really good team right now. Has a serious chance of beating USC. San Fran, if they're ever going to beat Gonzaga, it would be now. They have one of their best teams they've had in a long time. And Stanford is playing at a high level in the Pac-12, and they're playing number 3 Arizona. So anyways, all these games are pretty interesting. I'm going to have a lot of fun on Thursday doing that prediction video, but I'm going to go with Texas A&M. I think they're a legitimately underrated team in the SEC, just like I think the Miami's underrated in the ACC. I think Texas A&M is being underrated in the SEC. The Aggies are a lot of fun to watch this year. I think they have a decent shot at being a March Madness team, and I'm going to go with Texas A&M to upset Kentucky at home.